Hey everybody, I'm Mark Fetter, co-founder of Everyday, and just had a really fun conversation with Michelle McAneny from the College Spy. A few of the things we talked about were what is the most difficult year of high school, why is that, and what can students do to alleviate some of the stress associated with that year. When appropriate, not in a pandemic, what can students do to maximize the value they get out of a college campus visit, as well as some of the things you can do even now virtually. And my favorite talking point, I think, from this conversation was why you don't want to be a well rounded applicant. Hope you get some insight out of it, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks. So, main question to discuss today is what is the most difficult year of high school?
So in my current role as a college admissions consultant, I would say junior year is typically the most difficult year. In my former role as a school counselor, it'd be a toss-up between the transition out of middle school, so ninth grade, or grade 11. So
Ooh, okay,
different.
good. I like that
Yeah,
answer.
yeah,
It was
different.
kind of a toss up. You know, I was giving you a spike there to just say junior year, since that's what most people think. But I'm glad you
Yeah,
actually threw a little curveball in there. So let's come back to that one. But let's just roll with the junior year answer.
sure.
Um, why? Why is junior year considered the most difficult year of high school?
Well, for some students, it's the most difficult year academically, that they find that the work is difficult. Um, That said, I've noticed that a lot of students, they find their academic groove junior year. So students who might have struggled a bit freshman and sophomore year sometimes find themselves in a position of doing a lot better junior year. And I've had parents comment to me that their worries have dissipated about their student, that all of a sudden they're more organized, they're more motivated. And I think it's the upcoming college process that is part of that picture. I'm hesitating slightly because I think it's a college process, and I also think it's brain maturity and development. So
Gotcha.
yes,
So yeah, it's an interesting point that it's while it's simultaneously considered the most stressful, it's also when students start to mature a little bit more. What do
mm-hmm.
you know, as a college consultant, what do you recommend to your clients to basically set themselves up for the most quote unquote successful junior year of high school?
Yep. So for my clients, I want them to understand that junior year is the year that is most indicative to college admissions counselors or college admissions officers, the people evaluating their applications. It's the most indicative year of how they will do in college. So if you think about it, freshman and sophomore year, how students are doing academically and sometimes extracurricularly, it doesn't really tell as much because it's to college admissions officers about how the student will be on campus, how well they'll do in the classes, and how much they'll contribute to the community as junior year might, just because it's closer to the time when they're going to go to college. So it's an important year for that reason that admissions counselors are focusing on how did the students do junior year, what courses did they take, the academic rigor involved, and what are they involved in that year.
And do you get granular, or do you have any specific recommendations of, hey, you should take this class or do this extracurricular activity? Like, I guess if I'm a rising junior right now, what sort of actionable advice, if any, would you say, like, hey, Mark, go do this or that, or don't do this or that?
Right. Well, I definitely tailor my advice to what I know about you, Mark. So, but in general, I would say that adding rigor to your curriculum, and that looks different for different students, but adding rigor, academic rigor, can be helpful in terms of getting into college. So for some students, that's taking their first honors course or AP course. For other students, it's taking a full load of AP courses. Some students, it might be adding a dual enrollment class. Others, it could be continuing on in foreign language when it's not a graduation requirement for their high school. So adding rigor can help you get accepted to college later on. And my other advice is around extracurricular activities, which is to um, be involved in things that you're interested in. And if you're not sure what you're interested in, to try new things to figure that out. But overall, so especially for students looking at the top colleges, meaning the elite colleges, the Ivies, Stanford, MIT, participating in activities that center around a theme is going to be my advice to them.
So I think I get what you mean by that, but do you mind elaborating on what do you mean by a theme?
Yeah, sure. So if a student is interested in, let's say, soccer, and their whole life is soccer, it's travel soccer, it's the high school team, if that student was going to pick a community service activity, I would recommend that they choose to help younger students in a soccer clinic, for example, or something related and around soccer if that's their interest. And you can apply this to any interest at all. But colleges, the elite schools anyway, are often looking for students who have activities centered around a theme, and sometimes they refer to those students as pointy, in comparison to well-rounded students. So back when I was applying to college in the early 90s, it was a lot of well-roundedness was the key. It was, if you had a job and you were involved in a sport and you did an extracurricular activity, you're all set. Now, colleges are often looking for students with activities centered around a theme.
Cool. And what would you say to a student who says, I don't have any interests? I don't have a theme. Like what?
Yeah.
Even though they probably do, they just don't realize it. But like,
yeah, well, yeah, I would try to help them identify it if they are in a situation where they're not realizing it. But, sometimes that particular bit of advice doesn't fit for a certain student. And oftentimes I'll know that in advance from talking to their parents and talking with them. And I might not provide that exact advice because it will cause them stress, right? Especially if it is junior year. But if I'm talking to a student as early as grade 9, and I know that student has their sights set on elite colleges, then I have the opportunity to guide them into figuring out what are their interests and how can they develop those activities around that theme. Is a balance involved in your advising for college admissions purposes. The balance is this for me, especially since my background is originally is school counseling and now is college admissions and the expertise around college admissions. I give the best advice I can for college admissions, but I am aware that the student is a person and there are other things to take into consideration as well. And so I give great advice so that families understand what it is colleges are looking for and what students can be doing in order to set themselves up for success in the process and get accepted to the colleges that are good fits for them. And I let parents know that there are other factors to consider, and prioritizing college admissions is not always appropriate for every single decision you're making with your student. Does that make sense?
100%. And I'm glad you clarified it, but also when you brought it up a second ago by saying that your job is to help that student, but you also don't want to add extra stress. And right. So I wanted to ask you that. So again, I'm glad you brought it up. And the question is something along the lines of like, how do you balance that where, their whole lives essentially have been geared towards this decision and this next life stage transition to college. But like you said, it shouldn't be the end all be all of every decision you make. So how do you, I guess in a nutshell, help a high school junior create a successful year, but without making it overly stressful?
Yeah. So, how do I do that? It happens with students, and with working with me, I think what's happening is that I am so enthusiastic about what the student is involved in and engaged in and how they've and interested in them as a student and as a person, and enthusiastic about colleges and the admissions process, that I make it fun. We have fun when I meet with all my students on Zoom, even before COVID. And it's fun. It's like, wow, we really get to plan your future and and I get to join you and partner with you on that journey. And it's fun to do. And I help students understand that nothing in life is set in stone 100%. You can start one place and end up somewhere else. And you can start thinking you wanted one thing and change your mind. That's okay. Kids don't always know that. And so having an educational consultant come in and say, that's okay. It's all right to change your mind. So let's go and explore this one route and then decide if it's not for you, it's not for you, whether you haven't started it yet or whether you've taken the first steps in doing that route, whatever it is that, that you picked. So I come at it from that approach. There are some practical things students can do that could alleviate their stress. So I encourage students to do a lot of networking with different people in their life. So those people could be their teachers, it could be their school counselor, and it could be family, friends, and acquaintances, and people there just that they know of outside of their life in their outside of their academic life. So maybe like clergy or somebody like that. And the kind of networking I encourage students to do is this: to express interest in that other person. Let's say it's a teacher or a school counselor. So in that professional, say, how are you? How was your weekend? Be friendly, to go to extra help sessions and office hours with teachers and talk with them and express interest in their subject. To show your school counselor that you're interested in college admissions and want to engage with them, because oftentimes the school counselor isn't reaching out to the student as early as the student needs them to. So if the student takes the initiative, that can build the relationship. And one of the key things that I have students talk to their these people about is to say that if an opportunity comes across your desk, or you become aware of an opportunity that a student might be able to take advantage of, could you please think of me? And all of a sudden things start happening in the student's life that make them feel more confident in the process, or make them feel more confident as the type of student and the type of person who's going to succeed in admissions. And I'll just give you an example. When I was a school counselor, constantly I was being told, can you find somebody to babysit? We need 3 volunteers for this. We need somebody for a scholarship. And I would have to identify that person. And teachers get this all the time too. And so if I had a student come to me and say, you know, hey, Mrs. McAnany, which is what I used to go by before I became a missions consultant and became Michelle, can you let me know if you hear of an opportunity? I would automatically pick them because they asked. So I give a lot of different advice about what students can do, because I think if they're active in the process and engaged in their learning, both in the classroom and in extracurricular activities they're involved in, they're going to feel confident and they're going to be successful in the admissions process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it's such simple and actionable advice that, you know, doesn't take a lot of time, doesn't take a lot of effort, and it actually makes the other people's lives around you easier. I also love how you call it a journey, right? I mean, that's,
yeah.
You know, we like to say it every day that the destination is more important, or sorry, the direction is more important than the destination.
Right.
It's the same sort of philosophy. That's okay to change your mind. It's okay to pivot, but just move forward, constantly moving forward.
Right. You know, for some students, that networking piece and meeting with teachers and being friendly with them and asking questions, it isn't easy. I mean, it seems easy, like what's the big deal? You stop by for extra help for 10 minutes and say, hey, can you help me with this question? But I work with some students who are pretty shy, and I just want to make sure you're still there. It said my battery was low. All right, I got 10%, Mark, so we're good. Right. I work with some students who are pretty shy or maybe introverted, but more it's shyness, I think, and really can use a lot of coaching around that and encouragement. And I find that me telling them to do it, like, hey, I want you to meet with your English teacher and ask a couple questions. What can you ask about? Let's write them down. It works a whole lot better than mom or dad asking the student. Because they do it and they know I'll ask them about next week. Hey, how'd that go? And most of the time we're celebrating a pretty cool conversation between student and teacher, or student whoever. So yeah.
Nice. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit more about what you do, and I especially like the name of your consulting business, The College Spy. Yeah. So give us a little bit of insight behind why are you called The College Spy, and how do you help your clients?
Sure. So I named my business The College Spy with this in mind. I spy on the colleges and let you know what I learned. So one of my strengths and I could be what differentiates me from some other college consultants, is I visit a lot of colleges. My goal is 40 a year. I'm up to 217. And so I take a lot of college tours so that I am truly an expert in terms of colleges, that if I meet with a student and find out what they're looking for in a school, although I have to say most of the time it's finding out, but it's also helping them discover and choose what they're looking for in a school, because oftentimes they don't know. But once we do identify that, I can match them with colleges that are good fit for them and their goals, their academic needs, their personal needs, financial, considering all of these things, which schools will be the best fit. When it's not COVID, I send them off on college tours. They come back to me, report in what they liked and didn't, and we rework the lists. So that's why I'm called the College Spy. I do know an awful lot about colleges in particular. And then, I have a lot of expertise behind admissions and how things work in the admissions office and how students can tailor their applications to help maximize their chance of acceptance.
Nice.
So,
When we're not in a pandemic and assuming there will in the future be an opportunity for students to go do campus visits again, do you have any bits of advice? Like, if I'm going to go do a college campus visit, what should I be thinking about, or what can I do when I'm on my visit just to get the most out of it?
yes. Sure. I would say if you can, try to do one in a day. Oftentimes students are traveling and they try to fit in two because it's just for convenience. But if you do one in a day, you can really absorb what you're learning about on the campus and take the time after the information session and after the college tour to get to know the campus. So I advise students to spend time in the dining hall and eat there and sit down and say, would I fit in with these other students here? Would I feel comfortable sitting at a table with some of the people who I see here? Are people happy? Are they talking to each other? Are they looking at their phones? Things like that. And I encourage students to go to the library and sit down. Would I feel comfortable here? Is this where I want to be studying? Could be some very good advice. I send students to colleges with it's kind of like a checklist. Things like don't leave campus without answering these questions for yourself. And that checklist is on my website on the resources page. So anybody can take a look at it. It's thecollegespy.com/resources. It's a lot of different questions that students can answer. And what I find is best is if students highlight the 10 things that are most important to them before they go on a college tour. What do they really want to know about of these 40 or 50 items? That helps them focus their visit and helps them focus and understand what do they really care about in their college search and what things are not so important to them. Because all 40 or 50 things are not deal breakers on your list, of items to consider. Deal breakers meaning if my school doesn't have this, I can't go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not putting that on my list. But there could be 5, 6, 7 that are deal breakers. So I have students identify those first before they go.
Great. Yeah, we'll definitely link to that resource in the notes section of this video. Looking back in hindsight, I kind of wish I would have had that, because I don't know if you knew this from our previous conversations, but I went to University of Miami my freshman year in Coral Gables, transferred after freshman year because I realized it wasn't for me. I did a college visit ahead of time, and I look back on it now, I'm like, I was not very strategic. I think I was just going to see, I don't even know what I was really looking for at the time. So could have maybe saved myself a year and some credits and a lot of pain and money of having to do that.
I know. And all the feelings that come with needing to transfer. It's not an easy spot to get to. You don't just one day wake up and be like, I'm transferring and it's okay. It's, I think, a process that students go through when they're considering transferring, doing the work to get to the next college and then making the change. So I hear this a lot from people. Oh, I wish I had that when I was going to school. So, yeah.
Well, so any last words of wisdom for anyone watching, just to tie it all together in terms of what can you do to set yourself up for success as a junior in high school? Anything you'd want to add that we haven't discussed or reiterate?
To set yourself up for success as a junior in high school?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, oh gosh, so many things. I suggest that students write down their goals. Create goals the summer before junior year and write them down. Maybe choose 2 academic goals and 2 extracurricular goals. And the reason why I have them write them down is they're making more of a commitment to it, and they can go back to it and decide if they want to make a change. But yeah, and it could be simple things like make sure to go to extra help twice for math, or always review my notes before tests. It depends on the student what the goal is, but the more specific it is, the better, as opposed to, oh, I want to get an A. Well, how are you going to do that? And in terms of extracurricular goals, so that they're really thinking through what it is that they want to be doing that year, how they want to be spending their time, and making a commitment to doing something that is meaningful to them. So that's a good piece of advice. And in terms of the admissions process, while we're talking about juniors, the best piece of advice is start early. Start your college research early, beginning of junior year or earlier.
Great. And assuming you have enough battery power left to answer this question, I know that at the very top of the conversation, you'd throw in the curveball out there that junior year is most likely, at least perceptually, the most difficult. But I think, did you say it was going after freshman year or going into freshman year? What was your?
Going into freshman year.
Going into freshman year. So yeah, why do you say that? And what can someone, incoming rising freshman do to make their life less stressful?
Well, I think the transition to high school is scary for students. They're anxious, and it's depending on their middle school experience, the high school can be very, very different than what they went through in middle school, academically and socially. Oftentimes students are now at a bigger school with students that they don't know, so socially it is difficult, and the work gets harder. And my recommendation for students is reach out to resources that your school has available to you for academic assistance, and make use of them. And in terms of making friends and getting to know people, is really to get involved, pick something to do. I'm sure you feel the same way. When you think back on your times in high school and what was really special to you and important to you, you think of those things you were involved in, not necessarily the classes you took. So I'm always encouraging students to get involved from the point of view of it will help you get into college, but it'll also just make your high school experience better, and more dynamic, more interesting. So yeah, and students need to know, high school 9th graders need to know that admissions counselors are looking at their transcript and they're looking at 9th grade grades. Sometimes kids don't know that. They're not aware that 9th grade counts towards college admissions because college just seems so far away. So that's one thing they can do if they're not working with their school counselor, is stop in there and say, into the office and say, can you show me my transcript? I heard colleges see that. I don't even know what that means. And they haven't seen it. They don't know what the document looks like that's going off to colleges, that's being built throughout their high school career as they add courses and earn credits. So that's one excuse to stop in and say hey to your school counselor. So
great. Well, thank you. There's a lot of good insight to digest from just this short conversation. So I can imagine, a full package of working with you would be full of it and fun, like you said, make it enjoyable.
It is fun. I always have fun. So.
Good.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. Anyone watching this, like I said, I'm going to be providing some more information about Michelle's service and the College Spy below, including some of her resources and a link back to her site. So definitely check her out and subscribe for future interviews moving forward. Well, thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.